Hey everyone. Before we got into the bulk of this video, I wanted to make a little intro video for myself. I suppose just to give some context as to what I was trying to do originally and how I kind of failed, but it's all right. So as a kid, PC gaming was like a big part of my life. My dad, my brother, and I used to spend countless hours playing Command and Conquer, Age of Empires, Duke Nukem, Doom, all of those kind of games. So PC gaming was always a big thing for me, and it was also one of the earliest introductions I had to the Warhammer IP. Was playing some of the old classic PC games like Chaos Gate, Final Liberation, Shadow of the Horned Rat. And so what I wanted to do, I suppose, with this, I had this big project in mind of basically all the talking head videos I've been doing with Rick and Andy and so on and so forth. I basically wanted to replicate those with people who made these PC games in the 90s. I thought it would just be a cool thing to do. So I reached out to a whole bunch of, basically just looking through the credits of these games, and just tried to track down as many people as I could find, and basically kind of just shoot my shot and say, I'd love to, hear your thoughts or any memories you had. And sadly, I was largely unsuccessful. I was able to track a lot of people down, but most of them were either just weren't interested, didn't want to, kind of get involved in the video, or remembered very little of the project, that they didn't really feel like they had anything of value to contribute, which is fair enough. I think for, perhaps many of these people, they might not be fans of the IP, and, it's a job they did 9 to 5, 30 years ago kind of thing. So, but I thought it would be a shame. I'd done a few interviews already, and I thought it would be a shame if I didn't do anything with them, because I think they're rather good. So one game I really wanted to look at was Final Liberation. So Final Liberation is a turn-based strategy game that came out in 1997. It's based on Epic 40k, Imperium versus Orcs. And I think it's a great game. It's still something I play quite often. I think by today's standard, it's very clunky, but it's very much a game of its time. But it's got like an incredible atmosphere to it. The soundtrack is wicked, like this kind of proper like heavy metal, like riff-tastic soundtrack. And obviously the Geoff Taylor artwork, which is also the same for Titan Legions. As a kid, that kind of really drew me in. So it's a really great game, and it makes use of a lot of movie cutscenes that Commissar Holt is like very iconic. If you're a fan of the game, I'm sure you'll agree. So I highly recommend it. I highly check it out. It's available on GOG, Good Old Games. There are some issues with it running on I'm on Windows 10, but there is a fix that I'll put in the YouTube description. And it's cheap as chips as well. So, but anyway, so I wanted to reach out to people that made this game, and most people either didn't get back to me or whatever. But one person who did was a person called Andrew Greenberg, who was actually one of the lead directors of the game, which was great. So I had a nice phone call or video call with him, and it was really fascinating. It was great to hear him just talk about his memories of the game. So I figured I'd at least just upload that, and I'll splice in some in-game footage. I hope you enjoy. Cheers.
Well, thanks for having me on here. I'm Andrew Greenberg. I'm one of the 4 principals at Holistic Design Incorporated. At HDI, we make tabletop role-playing games like Fading Suns, now done by Ulysses Spiel. And we've done a lot of different computer games over the years. Machiavelli the Prince, Merchant Prince, Hammer of the Gods, Battles of Destiny, Emperor of the Fading Suns, Multicoon. But the one you're probably most interested is Final Liberation, the epic 40K tactical combat game from SSI back in the 90s. We had a lot of fun working with the Games Workshop team, with the SSI team and others to make that happen. We were very fortunate to have made that work. SSI was still SSI. They hadn't been bought by Mindscape yet. And we were at a convention called the Computer Game Developers Conference, now known worldwide as GDC. But back then it was a smaller event in a hotel called CGDC. And we were there having fun. I forget if we had already launched Emperor of the Fading Suns or getting ready to do it. At Machiavelli the Prince with Microprose had done very well for us, gotten a lot of good critical acclaim. The previous games had done decently for us as well. And we had made a lot of friends in the game industry, even though we were in Atlanta and everyone else, of course, was on the West Coast. We'd go out there for a once-a-year gathering with them. And we would regularly bring board games with us and just start playing board games in the CGDC hotel bar. And we had some great people join us. Johnny Wilson used to be the editor of CGW, one of the best gaming mags at the time, a bunch of producers and like. And one guy, Manny, who joined us, had worked with Maxis and a bunch of other great computer game companies. It was now at SSI, making cool things happen. And he whispered to us excitedly, knowing that we'd be interested in this, that they were now working with Games Workshop on a series of games. Manny is still very active in the industry. Should definitely be checking out his work as well. But Hoplite Games is his current company. Just released, I think it's called Broadswords, a chivalry tactical combat game. But in any case, we were talking about it. He had enjoyed our games. We liked his thoughts on game development. And he suggested that we give them a pitch for doing one of the Games Workshop titles. Ken Leitner, you now call him a CTO. He was just our head dude over programming at the time. Decided he was our main minis gamer. I love minis, especially Napoleonics, and of course with tabletop gaming. Historicals is really had been my main area for that, but I love the epic stuff as well, the Warhammer Fantasy, etc. But Ken was much more familiar with it than I. So he definitely took lead on that project. Plus I was still working on Emperor of the Fading Suns and getting some other projects going. And so Ken put together a very cool proposal. So SSI, for those who don't remember, did great role-playing games, some of the earliest wonderful Dungeons and Dragons titles and other RPGs, but especially strategy stuff. Love their strategy and tactical games. And they had just done Steel Panthers, I believe it was called at the time. Steel Tigers, Steel Panthers. It was a World War II tactical game, mainly of tank combat. And we enjoyed playing that one. It was a lot of fun. And when we pitched to them, they said, yeah, why don't we do something tactical, but let's kind of look at what happened with this the Steel Panthers line. Let me confirm that I got that name right. I'm pretty sure it was Steel Panthers and not Steel Tigers. They did a number of them, and they were definitely fun to play. Yep, Steel Panthers. I had it right. I thought so. So, but they want to do the Epic game that way. I think we originally pitched them on 40K itself, but they wanted to do Epic. And we love the idea, but with Epic, of course, as you well know, you got a battlefield with giant titans, imperators, and teeny tiny little space marines and orcs. And that was just a crazy mix to do in what had been historically the biggest thing on the battlefield was going to be a king tiger, not not a mecha orc war machine or an imperator titan. So we definitely had to get our heads around how this would work. One of the good things was always working with the Games Workshop team. John Gallard was always great to work with. Andy Jones at the time was overseeing licensing. We just had a blast with him. He'd come to the U.S. to tour and visit all the licensors, and he was a nonstop well of ideas. He was always a pleasure to talk to. Shared many great thoughts. Always good to have at the office. I won't say that those were office pub days, but I will say the conversation was more relaxed and pub-like at that time. So we began working on this crazy combination of imperators, squad combat, etc. I mean, it was based around a squad combat style game. And we were very fortunate to have some very talented artists with it. On Emperor of the Fading Suns, we'd already started putting together our 3D art team. Yeah, this is really taking back. This is when 3D art was really the new thing. We're talking mid-90s when we started doing it. So we did our first 3D art in Emperor of the Fading Suns. At the time, that trailer was mind-blowing for folks. Get standing ovations from marketing teams when they see the EFS trailer in 3D, glorious people walking around, space combat, etc. People would love the unit art. Of course, we didn't have them animated in 3D in Emperor of the Fading Suns. It was basically a 2D combat game, but you could look at them in 3D and drool over them that way. But now the idea was to go ahead and do that full 3D effect in for Final Liberation. And we really like to have such good artists because really we're trying to put giant imperators and tiny orcs on the same screen. And this is mid-90s screens. This isn't your giant LED display now. These were 640 by 480, I think might have been when we started doing it, the highest res we were doing, 800, 600, maybe by the time we shipped. So Bryce Nakagawa was our main in-house 2D artist. And when we told him the good news that he would have between 6 and 8 pixels to draw every single orc, you can imagine how happy he was. 6 to 8 little dots to draw an orc. Yeah, he was not pleased with that idea. Actually tore his beard out, but he filled up giant can of Coca-Cola, over-caffeinated himself, and figured out how to do it. And they actually looked really good for the time. So we were able to do it. It was also pretty fun because GW had been working with some production teams in England, and they had a lot of video for Space Marines fighting orcs and the like. And we sort of based the story in Final Liberation around the video they had already filmed in England. And we incorporated a lot of that as the cutscenes. And again, for the day, those were pretty superior cutscenes. My first, if you don't know, before I did Holistic Design, I was at a company called White Wolf. I was the original developer of a tabletop game called Vampire the Masquerade. And I got into computer games with Viacom New Media. I'd done a game called Dracula Unleashed, which was one of the very first CD-ROM games. Tell you how long ago this was. For you, those who even know what a CD-ROM game is. We had an argument at the time over whether it should run on dual-speed CD-ROM players or only single-speed CD-ROM players. And most of you probably don't remember anything slower than a 16-speed or 32-time speed. So anyway, it was a long time ago, but we did Dracula Unleashed as an interactive movie. So it was one of the first computer games to include a lot of video in it. And we had a lot of fun with that. The game did pretty well. But we were very happy to have the video in Final Liberation. It was much more active. We didn't have a lot of action in the Dracula Unleashed one. It was a lot of thematic, setting up mood, etc., advancing the story. This was all bolt or fire, we must turn back, etc., people under assault, etc. And cool, crazy costumes. They definitely had more of a special effects budget than we'd had for Dracula Unleashed. So we got to include these in cutscenes, and that was very rare at that time to have these full video cutscenes. So it was really neat to include that. People enjoyed those. We definitely got some good feedback on that. And the folks who had done it had done some great audio we got to include in the game, and it was really neat to be able to work with this film production team as well.
The character Commissar Holt
Yeah.
has kind of become like an iconic. You know, Larry Rue, was that his name? I think, you know.
Sounds right.
Yeah, you know, but yeah, he's kind of like an iconic cult character almost.
The Hand.
Yeah.
That was very fun. Yeah, he was neat. When they gave us the miniature, so much fun with that. So Ken Leitner was the head dude on the game and was doing some great work on it. Another group we were fortunate to work with was Armorcast. They did, for those of you who don't know, they did epic scale figures for 40K. So if you remember how small the Epic K tanks would be, and then you tighten on this one, suddenly they would build them in scale to actually battle in 40K. And they were a delight to work with. Had such great figures they had done. We got to get a lot of their models, and it was wonderful to have around the office. In fact, we went to Games Workshop Day in Baltimore while we were doing this, and Armorcast was out there in force, and they were doing these giant, I wouldn't say, it wasn't football field size, but it was like warehouse floor size 40K games using their giant mechs and tanks, and like, oh man, you'd have one person controlling the Titans to do all their turns, and that was a blast to see in action. And
so you were able to like use these models as reference material, I suppose, for the game.
Right. I mean, the epic stuff is great, but it's teeny tiny. And I said we had great artists, but they were going blind trying to work off the epic scale stuff. So those figures helped dramatically. And I can't say we didn't enjoy painting them up as well while we were working on them. We had some very good 3D modelers at the time. Very happy with the tanks and like they turned out. They loved looking over every single rivet on the textures and enjoying putting them together. One of the funny stories, again, tell you how long these models are not high polygon. I mean, we're talking about tanks. We were definitely not going over 1,000 polygons for them, etc. And we didn't have the best machines in the world, but we had decent computers for these guys. But if we wanted to render a tank, it was at the end of the day, you left your computer running overnight to render it, and you hoped it was done in the morning with no power going off overnight. It could be a very frustrating process, rendering just the tanks themselves. And it's crazy. I jump into my, we were doing this in 3ds Max at the time. I look at Max and Maya and how quickly I can render anything, all this incredible tries and polys and not have to worry about it. That was not the case back in the day. We definitely, it strained our machines to get that stuff working. So it is funny to look at it in comparison to the high fidelity art of today and look at what we had then. But that was some, we definitely got some good praise on the artwork, how well it kept to the GW feel and so on. And getting the GW feel, that was a big part of this. GW had a number of other licenses going at the time. And Andy Jones would tell us issues he was having with other licensors. It was always good to be able to work with them. I think we captured the feel well. It helped to have the good relationship with the GW team. They were always very happy with how we implemented their universe in it. I don't think we ever had any complaints. We get tweaks, change this, change that, but there were never any complaints. Some of the problems the other studios had. Part of the other advantage was the relationship with SSI. SSI was an incredible team and had done these amazing games that we had loved playing, grown up playing on our C64s and Commodore Amigas and so forth. Just really happy to have the chance to work with people like Brett Perry, John Eberhardt, who were great thinkers. We followed a little bit of the Steel Panthers model, a lot of differences. We went definitely in a different way than Steel Panthers. The campaign was very different than how you'd handle a Steel Panthers campaign. For instance, combat was as well, because we still wanted, Steel Panthers was very much about the tanks. And in this one, I mean, we love our orcs. We love to go org. and start the fight. So the orcs and Space Marines had to be able to have an impact on the fight. And of course, that Imperator had to be, when it started stomping around the map, had to be pretty insane. So it kind of took that initial spark, but created a very different fire than what the Steel Panther games would do. I love the sound effects for the game. I think the audio is wonderful. The music will always get the heart revving and pumping.
It's a great soundtrack.
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to track down the guys that wrote the soundtrack and interview them, but I haven't been successful so far.
It really was a fortunate coalescence of groups. So we had groups like ArmorCast. Then we had the folks who did the video involved to talk to. Of course, GW itself, the brains at SSI. SSI had some great people, even when they got bought by Mindscape, which is actually kind of how when we were getting more involved with them, was in the Mindscape phase. I think Manny was more Mindscape. But Kevin Bacchus, who ended up being one of the people who first started the Xbox with Microsoft, was involved at the time. He was always great to deal with over there. Everyone we dealt with on the product, Jeff Pena, Bill White, very, very good games people. We definitely worked with publishers who did not have any real game sense. They'd had folks who'd come from other software backgrounds or just didn't really understand games that well. But at SSI, yeah, games were definitely in their blood, and understanding them was key to being successful in the company there. So, yeah, and our team was quite good. I mean, I've talked about the artists already, the coders led by Ken, another one of our coders, Scott Rich. I think we gave him his start in games, but now he's one of the leads on Madden all these years later. So some very good people were working on the game itself. So it was always an interesting experience because GW said this, we firmly agreed. We wanted to keep the flavor of the miniatures game, but get all the advantage of the computer game where it's handling the rolls, it's handling the stats, it's handling the damage, it's handling the campaign, etc. And want to get all that advantage without losing the game flavor. You wanted to be, we want a game where you would play the orcs, you're yelling, "Warg!" as you start. And if you're playing Space Marines, you're yelling, "For the Emperor!" as you start the game or some point in combat. And we think the game really captured it. I think it really got that flavor. This very little as good as rolling dice for mini games and seeing incredible things happen on the battlefield. Even whether you're doing Napoleonics, which I love, or you're doing epic, or you're doing fantasy or science fiction. I mean, that's the fun. That's really the heart of it. And being able to capture that in a computer game isn't easy. We definitely enjoyed more cerebral strategy games. Machiavelli, the Prince, very much in your head. Same with Emperor the Fading Suns. And we wanted this tactical, Emperor the Fading Sun is very much a grand 4X strategy game. And this was going to be a visceral tactical combat game. And we think it definitely captured that feel well. That's certainly the feedback we got. And it is still selling to this day. So we do not own it. We own our engine. We own the assets we created in it. But it was bought by somebody else. They've got it up on GOG. If you haven't checked out GOG.com, definitely do. Lots of great games up on GOG. And I think it's done a few thousand units there this year already. So, yeah, here we are 25 years later, more than 25 years later, and it's still selling and people are still enjoying it and still hear good. And I will admit, there are a few sad things for us. One of those is that I think the SSI license went away before we could really start releasing the add-ons. We really want to do add-ons. We were working on Chaos first.
Yeah, there was Chaos versus Ultramarines, wasn't there? And then even built into the game menu itself is the Tyranid logo and the Eldar logo.
Oh yeah, I forgot that those were actually that we'd shown that off that early, but that was the plan. And we were very excited to have that happen, but then all the licensing stuff happened, and no more license there, and then all the deals went in a much different direction. But the ideas we'd had for those, that is There are many downsides to having worked on this project. It was fun. Everyone involved, we enjoyed it. I've heard other folks had horror stories with GW. We didn't. They were always a pleasure for us to work with. Part of it was that we all had already been working in the games industry for a while. At Vampire, like I mentioned, we hired some of the great GW writers, Graham Davis, Carl Sargent, others to work in Vampire, and loved the flavor, loved what they did. So there was certainly a lot of respect already between us, even though our games were a bit different in flavor. So we never had the issues with GW I've heard from other folks, and it is interesting. I think part of it was the mutual respect. They knew we appreciated what they had created, and they appreciated what we had done as well. So that made it easier to keep that relationship going. So yeah, one of the only downsides is all these great expansions that could have been out there for this game. Yeah, the Tyrannid stuff. There were some fun ideas for the Tyranids. And at that time, I don't think we could have gotten a special effects budget to have done Tyranids right for full motion video, but we were planning our own animation cutscenes for it, which were going to be a blast. So those are the only real regret are the things that didn't see the light of day that were there in the early planning with John and Andy Jones and so forth. Because yeah, that would have been pretty tremendous.